Hey folks, if you're like me, you love brisket, but you don't want to go to the expense of buying a whole brisket if it's just the two of you at home, and you don't want to go through the big crazy process. But we're going to make a poor man's brisket for you today, so stick around, we'll show you how to do it. What we are using for our poor man's brisket is chuck roast. Now, chuck roast used to be a poor man's cut of beef, but just like any other poor man's cut of beef that used to be like a throwaway cut, people learned how to cook them, and now it's no longer a poor man's cut. But you're still going to be a lot cheaper. A brisket's going to cost you $150 to $200 nowadays, depending on the size. So you're still getting away a lot cheaper. And if you're buying your beef from the rancher like we do, you can get it a lot cheaper. We didn't have any chuck roast made. We had steaks made out of everything, so I had to buy this chuck roast. So we're going to use this, but let's get out and start the barbecue. We want to get it going ahead of time. So let's get out there. All right, we're going to use our master-built Gravity 800 for this cook. We filled up our hopper with our briquettes. I like using a good hardwood briquette. This is applewood here, but hickory or anything you like will work. So this gravity feed smoker has got the convenience of like a pellet grill, but we're using regular briquettes and don't have to buy pellets. And this not an auger feed, this gravity feed as it burns, because the hopper here is airtight. This can't burn. It'll only burn on the bottom. So it's got a fan and everything that keeps things going. It holds its temperature, whatever you set the temperature at over here on the digital gauge. And plus you have meat probes that monitor the meat inside the grill as well. So we're going to get this thing fired up, and we'll get it ready to cook. Now, to start these gravity feed smokers, you got to have the lid and the bottom firebox open, and normally you put a little brick of fire starter in there, but I just lock my propane torch on and just hang it in that little groove where the brick usually goes. You want to go a couple minutes until smoke is coming out of your hopper here, but we can go ahead and turn it on and set our temp before that's done, because it won't start to fan or anything until all these doors are closed. They have little buttons here that once those two buttons are pressed, the fan and the cook process will start. After a couple minutes, you get smoke coming out of the hopper box here. It means this thing's lit up and you can close the doors up. Okay, you can probably hear the fan running now that we've got everything closed up, so it's running. Our temperature is climbing, so let's go inside and get our meat ready. Now, believe it or not, it's below freezing out here, but because that barbecue runs on a digital thermometer, it runs that fan as hard as it needs to maintain the temp. Plus that firebox is somewhat insulated, so it'll do just fine out here. Even if it was, 0 degrees, we'd be good. Okay, I take the chuck roast, unwrap it, throw some paper towel underneath it, and pat it really dry, which is going to seem kind of counterintuitive for what we're going to do next, but believe me, it works. So our next order of business, we got a foil pan because we're cooking in the barbecue. If you were doing this indoors, which I'll run through here in a minute, you can just use one of your regular pans that you normally use in your oven, like a lasagna pan or something like that. So we put a little bit of oil in the bottom of that pan. Now we're going to throw our roast in there. We're going to put a little more oil on top of the roast and rub it in there real good. All right, we got our roast oiled up like a hot girl on a beach. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to get really generous with our seasoning. This is my favorite. If you've been around the channel a while, you know that. But I like a salt forward seasoning This is a good combo seasoning. We use it on chicken, beef, pork, whatever. It's fantastic. You can also use like a prime rib or roast seasoning. This is Carl's brand here. Or any other combo seasoning that you prefer. It'll be just fine. Or salt and pepper if you like. Maybe a little garlic powder, garlic salt. I wouldn't recommend brown sugar because it'll burn a little bit. And we're going for a kind of a brisket flavor anyway, which brisket usually isn't sweet when you cook it. So let's get some on here. This is a big heavy piece of meat, so don't be afraid to season this up. Okay, you can see we got this seasoned up very liberally. And the good thing about seasoning it in the pan is you're not wasting any of your seasoning. Whatever falls down in the pan, you can kind of coat onto the sides and such, so you don't get any waste. So let's get out to the barbecue with this. We'll get her put in. Okay, while we were inside, our smoker cooker barbecue had time to come up the temp. So we took one of our meat probes, probed it right through into the middle of that roast. So we want to cook this until it's 150 degrees internal, and it's going to take probably a couple, 2-3 hours to do that. The other reason we're cooking in a foil pan, because some people will set it right on the grill. Put it in a pan, it captures all that juice that's going to seep out of that meat, because we don't want that going to waste down in the grill. So let's get this closed up, and it's a waiting game for a while. We'll come back when we reach temp and we'll show you the next step. Now folks, if you don't have a fancy barbecue grill or even a not fancy barbecue grill, don't be alarmed. You can still make this. You can do it right in your oven in your kitchen. And if you're worried about not getting any smoke, go buy you some of this right here, is liquid smoke. And 2 teaspoons per pound of meat that you have, rub it right in with that oil and it'll give you a little bit of smoky flavor if you're not cooking it on the grill. But you would run through the same exact steps as you would on the barbecue. You'd set your oven 250 degrees. Get you one of those electronic meat probes, or just use an instant read thermometer to figure out when you reach 150. But you can still do it. In an hour, we're up to 110 degrees on our meat. So it won't be much longer. I don't think it'll be a full 2 hours. What do you think, Ruby? You smell that good meat smoking? It's a gorgeous day out here. By the looks of it, you wouldn't think it's only about 32 degrees right now. Looks like it could be 80 out here. All right, it's been an hour and a half and our meat has reached 150 degrees. It looks absolutely gorgeous. Take a look at that. Beautiful. Smells amazing too. So what we're going to do now is we've got some stuff here. I've got 1 stick of butter that I've cut lengthwise 3 times into 4 pieces here. And we're laying that on top of our roast. And that's going to melt down over our roast. We're also going to put, oops, there goes my plate. We're going to put about 1/4 cup of garlic on here as well. Sprinkling it around on the top. There we go. And then I have some dry rosemary from our garden. We're going to give a good sprinkle of rosemary on top. Probably about 1.5 teaspoons or so. And then now we're going to cover this thing with foil. We're going to leave the probe in here because we want to continue with the probe. Make sure your foil covers your whole pan. This one's right on the edge here. Almost not covering, but we got it. And then we're going to go right around that probe wire. I think because we're not over very far here, I'm going to go ahead and go the other direction as well. I'll lap it over a little bit. We'll do two. I normally buy the wide foil. Well, that's not big enough. That one will work. You want to get that sealed nice and tight. You don't want any steam escaping out of there. So crunch it up underneath that rim real good. And I think I'll just leave it on the bottom rack this time. So now we're going to go to an internal temperature of about 205. It's going to take a couple hours more. So we'll see you then. So this roast, because it's covered now, is not going to pick up any more smoke from the barbecue. So if you actually didn't want to waste any briquettes, you could start your oven at 250, and then once it was done and being able to cover it in the barbecue, you can transfer it to the oven. That way you're not wasting briquettes. All right, we got up to 207 degrees. So I've got the grill shut down. I got my dampers put in. We're going to let this cool just for a second, and then we'll take this in the house and we'll wrap it up for about an hour. Okay, we brought it in the house. We wrapped it, double wrap in a towel. We're going to let that sit for an hour. Here we go, my friends, the moment of truth. It's our poor man's brisket. Smells amazing. Wow. Look at the juice that made in there. That's going to be some really good au jus. Let me get a pair of tongs. All right, let's check it out. Look at that. Beautiful. That's amazing. That's going to slice up beautifully. We're going to make some French dip sandwiches out of this. So we'll get that going. Got our poor man's brisket put away in the container there. And we dumped all the juice into this pint jar here. You can see we have the juice here. And this, a lot of this is the butter that we put in there, but there's a little bit of meat fat in there also. So we're going to make a fantastic au jus out of this, and we'll slice this up tomorrow for our French dip sandwiches. We've made some really good crusty rolls because you can't buy them at the store anymore, so we made those. We'll do a video on those one of these days soon. So we're going to have this for lunch tomorrow. We'll see you tomorrow. Now, we were going to eat this for supper last night, but my cousin called and wanted to go to supper in town, so we never miss an opportunity to hang out with family. So that's why we're having this today, but you can do it the same day also. All right, welcome back, folks. We're slicing up our poor man's brisket here. We'll obviously rewarm it before we make French dip sandwiches out of it. We'll warm it right in the au jus. It looks beautiful. See how gorgeous that is? And it pulls right apart. Got our poor man's brisket all sliced up. I'm going to throw this in a microwave real quick so we can get all that beautiful juice out of there. Alright, we're going to cover this up now. We're going to throw it in our oven on the lowest temp that it'll go, which I think is about 170 degrees on our oven. And rewarm that. And we're going to make our au jus. You do not want to rewarm that in a microwave. That'll ruin meat, makes it tough. Okay, we have our jar that we put all of our pan juices in yesterday. We pulled the fat off the top, put it in the pan, and then we reserve all of the juice. So we turn the fire on, we're going to get that melted down. Now to our pan, we're going to add a half of a white onion. We're going to put this on low. We're going to cook these onions low and slow. Now while we're waiting for our onions to cook down, we're going to put a little bit of red wine into our juice there. Probably about a third of a cup. And you can use white wine, but red wine gives it a really rich, bold flavor. So use the red if you got it. Another thing that I like to add is about a teaspoon of prepared horseradish. Don't overdo it. You just want a hint in there. About that much. The other thing I like is about a teaspoon of Dijon mustard. That won't only give it a little bit tang also, but there's lecithin in the mustard that will help the emulsion stay together. The fat in the pan and the beef broth, it'll kind of keep things together. We also got 2 cups of good beef broth here on the ready as well. Okay, our onions are well caramelized, so we're going to add 2 tablespoons or 1/8 of a cup of flour. We're going to use this as a thickener, but we're not trying to make something thick like gravy. So with the ratio of flour and fat and liquid, we're not going to end up too thick. Because remember, if you want gravy, the ratio is a 1/4 cup flour, 1/4 cup fat to 2 cups of liquid. We're going to be well beyond that. So we don't have to worry about getting too thick. So we'll stir in that flour. And once that flour gets stirred in, it cooks that raw flavor out of the flour. Then we're going to add all of our juice, our pan juices, with that horseradish and the mustard and the red wine. Going to kind of deglaze the pan a little bit with that cold liquid. And then we're going to add also our 2 cups of beef broth. Now this may seem like a lot of juice, but you need quite a bit to dip your sandwiches in. That bread soaks up a lot of juice. And whatever you have left over, you can put in a jar and use for beef stock, for a soup, or some other dish within the next few days. So we're going to bring this back to a simmer, and then we'll taste it for salt and pepper. Remember, all of those seasonings from the pan, from the meat, are in this. And the garlic from the pan that we put in the pan is in this. So it should have pretty bold flavor already, but it's always good to check. Our au jus has come to a simmer. We're going to taste this for spice. Okay, that needs absolutely nothing. It tastes fantastic. We're going to let this simmer for about 10 minutes, and then we'll be ready to go. Now, some people will strain this if you want like a really pure au jus. Run this through a fine sieve strainer, and then you'll have that. But I don't mind the little bits of onions in there. It doesn't bother me at all. Now I highly recommend that you make your own au jus because it's obviously so much better. But if for some reason you don't want to, go find this at the store. Use 2 parts of this to 1 part of water, and fantastic stuff. Please do not use that in the package powder stuff for your au jus. I will literally show up at your house if you do that. Now that we're about to bring this together, let's talk about bread. You want a really nice, crusty, firm bread for this. The bread that you can buy at the store nowadays just does not hold up to French dip. It's worthless. You got to get a nice, crusty loaf. We actually made these yesterday. Again, I'll share the recipe for that. But you've got to have a good bread for French dip. Just split her down the middle like that, and we're good to go. If you buy that worthless bread that you get at the store now, it's just going to fall apart in your hands and it will not hold up to French dip. If you can find a really rustic, like an Italian hoagie roll or something like that, do that. There used to be a fantastic company out in California. They made a bread. The company was called Toscanas. That was a fantastic bread. Had the cornmeal kind of on the bottom. It was perfect for this. Okay, everything's ready. Now, when I used to get these sandwiches at our local restaurant, you could get what's called wet, which they would take a ladle like this, get your au jus, and they would pour au jus over your bread before they stacked the meat on it. And they actually used to have a big slicer. They would hand slice off of this big slicer your meat right onto your roll. It was really good. So let's get the meat on this thing. I like dipping mine, so I don't do it wet. Got our au jus dished out. You want to make sure you got a big enough dish to where your sandwich will fit in it. There's nothing more frustrating than a little tiny cup of au jus that you can't dip in. Okay, we're going to put our sandwich together. Look at this beautiful faux brisket here. So tender. Just pulls apart beautifully. Put a little beef on the sandwich here. That's probably enough. Close that baby up. Look at that. That's not going to make it. In the au jus we go. Wow, I haven't had a good French dip since we moved to Nebraska. You'd think Nebraska being the beef state, you could get a fantastic one, but no such luck. Prime rib's hard to find too. I wish you could taste this, folks. You've got to make this. My word, folks, that was almost a religious experience. Holy smokes. Good thing I'm cutting wood today. Probably ate my whole day's worth of calories in that. So let's talk about storage on this stuff. So our leftover poor man's brisket there, we're going to take our au jus, we're going to pour that right into our dish. And it looks like we're going to have some left over that I will put in a jar and put in the fridge. But we'll store that just like that, and when we reheat it again, we'll reheat that whole pan. All right, friends, that is a wrap on our poor man's brisket and French dip. You can use this for anything. You can eat it like a pot roast or whatever, but it's really good in sandwiches. So hope you enjoyed the video, and I really hope you try this. It's going to absolutely knock your socks off. So until next time, stay safe, stay healthy. We love you guys. Hoping you're getting ready for your Christmas holiday coming up. I know we are. We're looking forward to it. So we'll see you next time here at Markelly Farm. We love you guys.